Okay, let's start again. The closing session of our conference is dedicated to 3 presentations on 3 different ways of technology. One deals with language technology, the other one with geospatial data, and the third one with audiovisual technologies and data. So I think we have a very exciting program ahead of us. And firstly, I would like to introduce you to Zoltán Szatucsek. He's introduced himself already yesterday. You know him. He's our perfect talk master, master of ceremony of the conference. But for those who are online and have not attended yesterday's meeting, just very brief, Zoltán works at the National Archives of Hungary, and he's the director of the Innovation and IT department, and he is the one who represents the National Archives on an international level. So at any international meeting, be it the EAG, be it the EBNA, or be it the European Archives Portal Europe Foundation, Zoltán is the one who represents the National Archive there. So, Zoltán, we are looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. May I need the controller? May I have the controller, please? Okay. Thank you. Oops. Okay. So the topic that I would like to speak about today is really very close about a historical event which is crucial importance for the Hungarians, and not only for the Hungarians, but also for a lot of other countries in the region. So because during the Second World War and shortly after that, a lot of prisoners of war were captured and taken away for forced labor. Regarding Hungary, 1.2 million people were taken regarding the territory of the country after the decisions of Vienna, so including northern part of Transylvania and some part of Slovakia. But if you are speaking about the current territory of Hungary, the number is also very high, 800,000 people. Some of them were taken to the by the Western allies to different prisoner of war camps in France or in the Western countries, but most of them, majority of them, were taken by the Soviet Union. So the intention of the Soviets, intention of Stalin in the Second World War, that to compensate the Soviet Union for the damage what the German-Hungarian allies caused during the Second World War, to compensate it with labor. So for this reason, both the prisoner of wars and those people who were internees were taken for work, and they were forced to labor. They were concentrated in different kind of camps and registered, and this is the basis of the documents which this research and service based upon. Not only we Hungarians have this data, but the other countries involved in this story. So in 1991, the Italian government got these records regarding the Italian prisoners. In the mid-90s, Austria got these records too, and the Boltzmann Institute holds these copies, and also Germany got these records a couple of years ago. In Germany, the German Red Cross holds these archives. In 2019, there was an agreement made between the Hungarian National Archives and the Russian Military Archives in Moscow. The agreement, according to agreement, Russian company digitized and indexed these so-called uchetnaya kartochki, which were the register cards of the records, which also held in the Russian military archives. Yes, I have to do it parallel. So, based on this agreement, we have almost 700,000 registration cards in copy, which means actually a double number of this in digital copies, because we have two sides of each cards. And the Microsoft Access database in Russian with Cyrillic letters. So, because the story was very complicated, so according to the military right, only the soldiers should have been taken, but it was absolutely different. So the Soviets ignored all these habits. So they didn't sign the Geneva Convention. So actually they didn't have any agreement, but they have to deal with. So they took everybody, and because of the agreement with the Western allies was that this compensation was accepted by formerly Churchill and Roosevelt and Truman, that so the Soviets had the right to take away all the German inhabitants to the Soviet Union, including who lived in Hungary. Which means in the practice that the Soviets taken away, so captured civilians who had the name sounding only German, or even civilians who had the name Német, which means actually German in Hungary. So it means that people get and to the Soviet military camps for different kind of reasons and different kind of status. This was the reason that we have 9 different kind of cards in this collection. All of them has several data elements, mainly the identification information about these persons, and further additional information in which camp they will hide, or where they were captured, birth data, and different kind of data like these. We are talking about more than 11 million individual data elements. And when we got these records, we had to decide how to publish these records, which is not, of course, we couldn't do it in Russian language with Cyrillic letters and the original way as we got, as we acquisited it to the National Archives. We made an estimate of the processing, and it would take 35 person-years if we wanted to process this. On the other hand, there was a very huge pressure from the society to have access to this database. So the dilemma was how to process this database, how to process this data, and how to make accessible and consumable for the people who, of course, don't speak Russian and cannot read Cyrillic letters. So we consulted with a lot of companies, had expertise in this field, and of course we wanted to use new technologies, but all of them said that it actually doesn't need any, because it's just a transliteration things. So we have to transliterate the Cyrillic letters, Cyrillic writings to a Latin one. So there is no challenge for example, making a machine learning project or building a non-usual algorithm for that. And finally, it turned out that some of these data elements can be processed automatically. So the transliteration of personal names and geographical names can be solved. But of course, we have note fields or more textual narrative fields in these cards, which is not possible to do it automatically. So we combine this approach, combine the methodology, and for some data elements we used machine supported solution or IT supported solution. For some we used mechanical solution, just search and replace elements for the names of the camps or these kind of elements. And finally, we also use manual translation. So the combined approach would be the most fruitful. I would like to focus on the machine transcription, which we faced a lot of challenges with. So you have to understand how these records were created first. So when the prisoner arrived to the camp, there was an interrogation. They laid down a 5 pages long record, interrogated the person and recorded a lot of data on him. And this card, this registry card, based on that. But this card was copied several times. So first it was the original record was made. Then second, somebody made a transcript from the original to this registry card. And then from this registry card, the Russian company made the database. So it was like the childhood game that giving the information to each other years, and at the end, some absolutely different outcome will come out. The second problem was that these administrators who recorded this information had different background. Some of them were Russian soldiers with a very low level of education, but there were also Ukrainian soldiers from the other member states of the Soviet Union. There were Hungarians too, who stayed there after the First World War. They were German people, speak more or less good Russian or not. So it means that the way that how they described, how they took this data was extremely diverse. So the conclusion was that neither the standard Cyrillic Latin transcription method, which there are several standards for that, neither the phonetical transcriptions wasn't possible. There was also a problem with the segmentation of the geographical names. So we had in these cards two major geographical fields. One of the birthplace, and the second was the place of where the person were captured. But these geographical names were complex, so we had to segment them. And there was a huge variety of traditional and ethnic surnames in the cards, so it wasn't easy to decide whether a name written in a Slavic way was a really Slavic, belonged to a really Slavic person, or it was just implemented or recorded by the Russian that way. I show you some examples. So you can see two examples for the geographical names field. One of the problems that we had more data in this field, but not only geographical names. So we have to segment it by country, by the county, by the settlement, and we have to drop off all the other information which not belong to that. Most of the times, the geographical names data was in a random order. So once, of course, because it was recorded manually, sometimes they start from the country, go to the lower hierarchical levels, sometimes the other way around. I also brought some examples for the traditional names. So there are a lot of surnames in the Hungarian language which had only minor one letter different, but of course the surnames are different. So the Cyrillic, the Russian language, and the way of the Cyrillic characters hid this information. So it was most of the times ambiguous that which original name in the record related to the proper name of that person. Okay, but we were brave enough and started the project. So with these two fields, the geographical names and personal names, we made a very first strict matching. One Cyrillic letter matched with a Latin version, and if this rule-based algorithm find this geographical name or personal name in a reference database, we were happy, and it was stored in a output database. If not, there was another rule, loose matching rule, in which the input was the same geographical name, the same reference list, but one original letter was related to many options. In this way, the output was a regular expression, and this regex was used for the reference list, and the output was some versions, some options for the solution. Oops. Okay, but the outcome was, how can I say, under our expectations. So we had a lot of problems, and the output was only by 80%. The 80% of these data was handled by these algorithms, which means that it included the false positive outputs as well. So 80% was not enough for us. So we had to do a lot of changes in order to improve the outcome. So we decided to skip this strict matching phase, because we found that even there was a one-to-one identification of the two names, even in that case, there might be several options by the loose matching thing. And because of this very complex relations between the name on the cards and the options of the surname or the geographical names, we have to find that it's not so easy that we have a relation between the Hungarian language and the Russian language, but we also have to count on the possible errors. So this is why we also started to use a Levenstein algorithm to find character errors or to identify the name and the connections, even we have differences like that. We have to handle the abbreviations. So after the first attempt, for example, we have more than 1,000 country names, which was impossible, of course, but it was because there were so many errors in the country names. We made truncations, we made a lot of change which were related not by the two languages or not related to the two languages, but found that this could improve the database. One finding was, for example, that the developers were very surprised that they found women names in the list of the prisoners, because we talked about prisoner of wars. No women served in the Hungarian army, so how they could have them. So that, of course, the Soviet troops captured women only as prisoner of war status, but they were actually internees. So we have to make possible to identify women too, and it was a first prestige for the development in order to find those women names which were very close to the names of the man. So this was the second attempt when we improved the process. So we skipped the strict matching, we used the loose matching with several outputs, and we used this difflib Python library with the Levenstein algorithm also for several outputs. So finally we have options. We have options-based probabilities. These were also hypotheses, so we can, as Barbara said, we cannot state for sure that this solution is the only possible one, but we have possibilities, and we provide possibilities for the users. And we gain a relatively good result. So altogether, I try to follow it in my computer too. So altogether, the evaluation was 86%. So it means that in 86% of the geographical names and personal names, we had among the hypotheses the proper one. And the worst value was 73 with one data element of the geographical names. We cannot apply any automatic metrics, so it was a manual evaluation. So here you can see the output and the evaluation of the first result, when some entities in this first attempt was with a very low value, 40 to 60%, and the second was much better. I just brought some examples here how this algorithm could manage the diversity of these Cyrillic names, and there are some very tricky, which So there are some very tricky, and most of them couldn't be identified without this machine algorithm. So for example, this is a Hungarian county, Szatmárskoy, was written by the language rule of the Russian language as an adjective, and the Hungarian name is Szatmár. So it's obvious that letter-based transliteration wasn't possible. Oops. Okay, unfortunately we missed one slide, which could also prove how good this transliteration was. There was one Hungarian settlement which had 47 different versions in this database, and this algorithm could identify it. For the manual editing manually the database. We also developed an editor user interface. The database contains the outcomes of this machine-based algorithm, and the archivist could edit if they want to improve the content. I think the real innovative way was the publication, which I would like to speak a couple of words about. So there was a huge dilemma for us. So this database wasn't the first what Hungarian archives got. The military archives a couple of years ago got the database of the death persons. So those prisoners who died in the Soviet Union camps. And their methodology was quite different, so they tried to identify the persons with unique values, which was based on actually also an estimation. So there was a dilemma for us because we didn't have, and we couldn't say that this person was specifically that who, what we could read from the database when this methodology gave us as a solution. And we decided that we will give the users all the data, and the users should decide what he or she can use. So first of all, we decided to give the original card as a picture. We also decide that we give the user the original Russian and Cyrillic value of the database, and we provide the hypothesis and the probability index of that hypothesis. So in this way, we could give all the information. We could be a kind of a content by our traditional way of publishing historical data. We could be reliable, providing the original source, and we indicate that all of the other things, all of the other way of the processing is just based on a given methodology. So this is how you can see how sorry. I'm a bit far from the screen, so this is why I use this. So this is the user interface for search. Okay, and this is the data of one specific record. So we provide the card. Of course, the user can enlarge it, can read both sides of the large. With red, you can see the original database content, and with the other, with bold or with the other typography, you can see the data based on the machine translation. It was a huge success. So this was the answer for our dilemma. So you can see that in this Google Analytics that in that period when we published this database, sorry. Thank you, Thomas. You are a great help now. So it was a huge interest in those days, and of course this database was very important for the users, and it reflected not only in the Google Analytics. So after these peaks, the user data of this database remained high. So actually, our services, which is part of this database, this data set, is part of our general service, and the usage of our general service doubled since then, since that publication. It remained the double of that. So it was a huge interest, you know, for that. And not only in analytics, but to our surprise, the people connected and give the information to each other through the social media. So there was a huge hype how the social media got this database and shared this data with each other. So you can see from this diagram that now 40% of this user interface coming from the social media, specifically from the Facebook. And there is another important data that 65% of the users use this database through mobile devices, which means that actually the users use their mobile device as a reading room of the National Archives. I think it's not possible to get closer to the users like than this. So we haven't finished this work. So we would like to continue. Of course, this manual editing is important because we find a lot of mistakes by what the algorithm did, but actually the users don't bother because with the probabilities they can find what they want. So it's not so important if we have some mistakes or it's not the highest ranked by the name what they want. They found it by the search term, so it works. We would like to give coding the geographical names, so we would like to visualize this whole thing by map. We collect the information of the Soviet camps, prisoner of war camps, and we would like to follow the life courses of these people through the map and linking the records to, as the Danish colleagues do, because we have several databases, not only one, not only this one. So we have database when the relatives were looking for their relatives who were captured. We have database on the dead person, of the died person, and we have a database of those who returned. We would like to link this database, and this would be also for us the first step to do the same, what the Danish do, because we would like to use, of course, other databases to link with, but we would like to do this as a first step. And of course, it's important to integrate these codes into our system because we would like to reuse it for other purposes. Yeah, okay, just a very short summary. So the lessons what I learned that this methodology, this way of how we try to solve this problem is something which unavoidable. So there are some records, some databases which cannot be processed without automation. Actually, it's not possible. So if we would like to provide a service, it cannot be done manually. But the archival expertise and that knowledge which could support the developers is essential. So that we are working together with a lot of developers. Machine learning engineers doesn't mean that archivists are not necessary anymore. And it also was a note today, I can't remember in which presentation, but how much the emotional part, yes, it was from Thomas, how important the emotional part to bring the users into the archives, and it was very clearly visible how the people were touched by the memory of their ancestors. And social media and mobile communication are also access points, and these as access points for the archives are equivalent to the traditional reading rooms. So these were the lessons we learned. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that highly interesting presentation and also for the link to the previous presentation. I think it's the same, as you said, the societal impact of archives can be huge. We can touch anybody's heart out there. Any questions? There's one question from the chat.
A question for Zoltán. Is there also an international cooperation on this data in terms of methods, considering that there are copies of this data in several countries?
There is no, and there is a very easy reason, a very obvious reason for that, because we are the only country where these data are not under the GDPR. So we have a specific legislation makes these records accessible to the public. So it's special, personal records, and we had a specific legislation, the right to publish personal data related to the victims of the First and the Second World War. So for example, in Austria, it's not possible. So if you want to have data about your relatives in Austria, you have to directly go to the Boltzmann Institute and ask for the data. And they give you the data only if you are a relative of that. So we would be happy if that we could connect this database or connect these people to each other internationally. That would be, for example, because these cards are the captured Hungarians, but we cannot know that in the territory of Hungary, the people who were taken were only Hungarians. So they might be ethnic Germans lived in Hungary with Hungarian citizenship and registered as Germans or Romanians or other ethnicity. We cannot know. So shortly, unfortunately not, but we would be open to that.
Any other questions? So just one question from my side. At the beginning you mentioned that there are 11.5 million data elements and it would need 35 FTEs to process it. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Can you estimate how many FTEs you need with application of technology? How much is the saving of FTE? Can that be said?
Okay, we didn't monetize it. The main driver to reduce the time of processing was the demand from the society. So yes, but I don't have exact figures, but it was much lower. The cost was much lower because it's public data. It's not a secret. We spent approximately between 10 and 15 million Hungarian forints for the development, which means it's approximately 500,000 euro. No, sorry, I'm not good in changing. 50,000 euro for this development. The most expensive part was the digitization, but it was paid by the Hungarian government for Russia.
Okay, thank you. So, sorry.
What and how was the starting point of the reading machine for Russian handwriting? Can you elaborate a bit the process of translating the Russian handwriting to Latin code?
Okay, yes, it was my mistake that I didn't mention, because we worked in this with the linguistic institution of the Hungarian Academy of Science, and there were special linguistic experts of Russian language to help the formulate the matching and those rules what we used in this machine algorithm. First, we started with the standardized transliterations, but it wasn't usable.
Okay, any other questions? If there aren't any other questions, thank you very much for that highly impressive and also very practical presentation. So I think you could write a handbook how to deal with such complex sources so that others could benefit from it. Thank you very much.